What's up, you guys? Thanks for tuning into the Drew Deeks channel today. Gotta say, I love throwing the reverse retro on once in a while. Just want to show that a little bit here because I know that not everyone's a fan of it, but I love it. And the fact that I got Shea Weber on it, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with his status, but I am going to talk about him very briefly today. So here's our subject for the day, guys. Of course, didn't get a chance to touch on this last week, but John Sedgwick is the new Montreal Canadiens assistant general manager. Kind of old news at this point. We all knew that, but we're going to touch on a couple things really quickly regarding what his role will specifically entail and how he's going to help the Habs. And it's expected that this week, Adam Nicholas is going to be joining the player development team for the Montreal Canadiens as a skills coach specifically. We're going to touch on that. Also briefly going to touch on Marty St. Louis' non-negotiables. So he mentioned that, of course, in a press conference earlier this week, whether it was pregame or postgame, and just very convincingly setting the tone of, how he's been able to do this. Now, I didn't go into specifics, but we're going to touch on it. And then, of course, a very brief Shea Weber update. So let's go back to the top and talk about the Habs' new assistant general manager, John Sedgwick, who, again, didn't get a lot of love, I think, from the attention that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton got when they got hired. And, of course, Marty St. Louis, Vincent Lecavalier, just to name a few, right? I mean, there's been some huge sweeping front office changes, as we know. But what is John Sedgwick specifically going to do? He was already with the organization. He was part of the Marc Bergevin era in a lesser role, of course. But he's going to be handling more of the cap situation for the Montreal Canadiens, sort of finagling the cap to make room for players, to make room for the vision that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton have for the future of this Montreal Canadiens team. And it looks like, based on what we're hearing, at least lately anyway, it may not actually be a full rebuild. It's actually looking closer to a restructuring of the roster. However that's going to look, we don't know fully what players are going to leave yet. But John specifically mentioning in detail, of course, too, that this is all about the modernization of the Montreal Canadiens. And he has the same vision that the current new front office regime does, and he shares that. And one thing that was important to note from John Sedgwick, specifically from reports anyway, and it would make sense, is that when it came to the drafting of Logan Mailloux, for example, he was one of the only ones that spoke up and said he wasn't on board with the pick. And it makes sense, the fact that if that's true, because he's still part of this new regime with the Canadiens, and he shares their vision going forward. And obviously Marc Bergevin and Trevor Timmins had a different vision. Now, we are going to have to talk more about Logan Mailloux at some point. That's a fact. We're going to have to discuss this player and what the Canadiens are going to do with him. He's currently with the London Knights, having a okay season with them so far. And a lot of people have mixed feelings about it still to this day. And people are still upset about the pick. And that's very much okay. You're allowed to share in the comments what you think about the pick still. And the only reason it's worth mentioning, of course, is because John Sedgwick was one of those that wasn't for it, but he's now still part of the front office. So the Canadiens obviously respected that he was willing to go with the new vision that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton have for the team. And I'm thinking that at some point, of course, like I said, we have to get into the subject about this player, not so we can drop negativity. We all know what he did, but it will have to be a discussion point at some point. So now the newest news that hasn't dropped quite yet, but Adam Nicholas is expected to be named the new skills coach for the Montreal Canadiens, one of their new skills coaches, if they're going to have more than one. And of course, taking part in the player development side of things on the ice, whereas Vinny Lecavalier's role will be more specifically entailed to recruiting outside of the rink. We know he's going to be staying in Florida. Some of you guys showed your frustrations and feelings on why Vinny can't come to Montreal. But regardless, all these new guys are going to help us, whether they're there in person or not. And that's been a huge 360 or 180 turnaround for the Canadiens. So that's why we go right into Marty St. Louis. So we'll get more into Adam Nicholas and when we get a press conference with him, if we do, which I hope we do, in the coming days when this announcement is made official. But Marty St. Louis non-negotiables with Canadiens players. We don't fully know what they are. We did get the question from John Liu recently. And you know what? That's okay, because we're seeing the results on the ice. And the non-negotiables, you talk about those in any workplace setting that your boss might have for you, whatever. But they seem to be working, obviously, because the Canadiens are still on a 5-game win streak. And I just like the fact that Marty said it with so much confidence when he said that my players, my guys know what my non-negotiables are. And obviously they respect that, because him being a Hall of Famer, the experience that he's brought thus far has totally turned this team around. So I just thought it was worth mentioning, because it's a beautiful thing to see right now. I know that we still want the draft pick. We keep talking about that after every post-game show that you guys have watched, but I love what I'm seeing. I just really love what I'm seeing. So I hope it keeps up, and I think it will. And I think the interim tag will be removed just as soon as the end of the season. So that's my opinion on that. A Shea Weber update. When are we going to get one? I know that he's not trending in terms of interest right now, that we can wait till the end of the season to hear about him. But because John Sedgwick did mention Shea Weber in his press conference, just basically saying how in an ideal world, when it comes to LTIR is not optimal for the cap. So he said that there's not as much flexibility as actually having the cap space when there's an LTI contract on the books, which would mean that Shea Weber would be on the books till at least 2026. So, and that's if he retires or whatever. So in an ideal world, John Sedgwick said that he would like to have Shea Weber instead. And of course, I can't disagree with that take. So for sure, I mean, I have the jersey on, but really miss Shea. And I hope that, I pray that there's a world that exists that maybe Shea Weber and Carey Price have one more crack at it. Is it realistic? Maybe not. But the fact is, his name was brought up, so I thought I would bring him up. I got the jersey on. He's on the retro, and of course, there may be a new retro coming out next season now we hear. But anyway, guys, leave your comments down below on any of these subjects. Let me know what you think. Thanks for the support. I appreciate it. We'll see you post game probably for Winnipeg tomorrow. I can't guarantee the later games, post games. They'll probably be released in the morning if I can get to them all. I'm trying. You guys have been really faithful watching lately, so thank you for that.